Welcome to the Redemption Life Podcast, a resource from Redemption Church, Twin Cities. Through these conversations, we aim to explore what it looks like to live a redeemed life, rooted in the gospel, formed by Scripture, and shaped in community. You can find more information about our church at redemptiontc.com. But in the meantime, we hope that this resource encourages you and helps you to know and follow Jesus.
We are rolling on the recording, so clap and take it away.
All right, welcome to the Redemption.
Was that too quick? You gotta give it a breath. Here we go.
Here we go.
Like a 3-second pause between
right.
the clap and the.
All right, you do it.
Okay.
You do the intro this time.
All
You're
right.
so good at it.
I'm not
This
good
is
at
totally
it. I
making
just
it
know
in. This is
enough.
gonna be the start of the
I just know
Totally.
enough that there needs to be a
It
breath.
has to be.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Redemption Life Podcast. We're talking about fatherhood today. Drew,
No,
did I nail it?
You have to keep going with it because you took the intro.
I just gave a note. That's all I did.
You can't.
I'm trying to be a friend of the producer, you know?
So, guys, before the podcast comes online, you have to clap, and then apparently you have to wait 3 seconds, and then the episode
At least a
starts.
breath.
And I waited half of a second,
Not even.
and then Isaac comes in with all this.
It's recorded. We could clock it later.
He came in with a bunch of self-righteous criticism.
I'm
That-
trying to be a friend of the producer.
It wasn't a lot of words, but it was just the way you looked at me, you know?
I don't think I made eye contact. I was too nervous.
This is going to be the spirit of our whole conversation.
Maybe.
It's already
All right.
more fun than the last podcast I was on.
Guys, but we're talking about fatherhood. And so the question that everybody has is, what's this guy doing on the podcast?
Yeah.
How did you get in the fatherhood conversation, Austin? Do you
You
got
know-
some news or something?
Oh, well, yeah. Quincy is here.
Heyo.
Quincy is here. So I'm a dad now, which is absolutely wild. December 26th is when it happened, which is super hilarious because we were at the Christmas Eve service and Drew and I were talking. And do you remember this? You looked at me and you were like, Cora's due date was January 9th. Okay. So at Christmas Eve, we were thinking we've got a couple weeks until baby's going to show up. And Drew, you were looking at me and I was scheduled to preach that following Sunday. And you were like, man, wouldn't it be so crazy if baby came and I had to fill in for you on Sunday? And Cora and I were both like, yeah, no way that's going to happen. And then literally a couple hours later, Cora's water broke at like 4 a.m. on Christmas morning. And away we went. And then he ended up coming on December 26th. So super stoked. But yeah, we're in it now. He's a little under 4 weeks old. So we're just loving it.
Congrats, man. That's exciting.
That's awesome. And then Isaac, not a ton of people probably have put together which ones are your kids running around the Redemption lobby and, but what's your kind of stage of life, stage of parenting that you come into the fatherhood conversation with?
Yeah, so I have 3 kids. Lewis is 5, just turned 5 in January. Adelaide is 3.5, and Ellis is just over 10 months. So we're kind of 5 and under. We've got the spectrum in the house.
Yep. So you're bringing the perspective of just
From the trenches, man.
Yeah, the trenches, the utter chaos stage of parenting. Yep. And then I'm kind of bringing the perspective of having been through those little kid trenches, and now I'm in the preteen teenager trenches. So I've said before that I'm in the Uber driver phase of parenting. And so I have a short gap between when I come home from work and I usually lay down, take like the farmer power nap. And then it's like, get a drink, get some kind of podcast, get some music that I want to listen to, and I'm just driving. At night, taking my kids to activities, going to their activities, having great conversations with them. But I have a 16-year-old named Emma, a 14-year-old named Luke. I have twin daughters who are 12, Ari and Hazel. And then I have a 10-year-old son named Gabe. So no more single digits.
That's crazy.
In my
That's
family,
so wild.
which is crazy because when Redemption was planted, my youngest was 1.5 years. Gabe was 1.5 years old. So hopefully in this conversation, we're bringing these three different perspectives, and we're all asking each other questions about the stage of life that we're in and how we're seeking to be godly dads, because our hope would be to be Christ-like fathers. And really, we feel this dual role that we all have in ourselves being Christ-like dads, being present with our kids, loving our wives, being godly husbands. But we also are seeking to embrace that, given our roles, specifically Isaac and I as elders in the church, and then you, Austin, having a very public role in the church as a teacher and Salt Company director, being examples to people. Because the crazy thing that the Bible teaches us is that our role inside of the home as dads and the character that we display there is what qualifies us to be servants in the church. Because how can we serve in the church if we don't even know how to manage our own household? Since the church is described as the family of God, then managing our little households comparatively to our church is what sets us up to be able to manage the church well. So I thought this would be a good place to start. It's the passage that most readily comes to my mind when I think of fatherhood, because it's concise, it's punchy, it's convicting, and it's helpful to get us in the right mindset. But it's in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. So I'm going to read it in the ESV. It says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." So as dads, that is what comprises our role. So let's just kind of take that one phrase at a time. Do not provoke your children to anger. So Isaac, we've had conversations about this. We have sought to live that out and found it to be challenging in the different stages of parenting that we've been through. So when you think about just that first phrase, do not provoke your children to anger, what is inspirational about that? What's convicting about that? And Austin, feel free to...
Can I jump in first and just ask, what does that mean? When I read that, and I'm thinking, what does it mean to provoke a child? You know, and how could you put that in maybe common terms for somebody starting? Like, what would be an example of me provoking my child? You know, that's not a common word I would say is described. What's an easy definition for like provoking a child?
I think another translation of the Bible renders that as like exasperate. Like, don't exasperate your children. Like, don't essentially fatigue them into just like being burnt out by you as a person and the way you like exercise leadership and authority in your house.
Yeah.
At least that's how I've always read it of provoking your children to anger. It's like, man, don't have such a strong arm or strong hand with the way you lead your family in your house that it's just hard to be your kid, you know? And
that's
so
good. That's helpful.
I was thinking about you, Drew, in another podcast, you had brought up Jesus on the road with his disciples and how they're kind of bickering behind him about who's the greatest. And he doesn't like interject in that moment and be like, shut up, guys. Like, you know, I'm the greatest. Like, let me put you in your place. He waits until the evening. And even then he doesn't like, hey, we need to have a conversation about what you said on the road. He asks a question and he like invites them into that moment of correction. And I was just really convicted by that. I feel like so often I'm so reactive with like my parenting and I want to be right. Like, I want to land on the right side of things. And there's a concern with like being right and my kids behaving rightly that this is like, man, I need to hear that so bad. Like, don't provoke your kids to anger. One of my first reactions is also, dude, my kids are the one that are provoking me to anger. Okay. Like, let's frame this rightly. They're the bothers here. And then for that to be like the first thing that's said about fatherhood of like, no, like you need to be the one that is guarding yourself against provoking them to anger is such a Such a convicting word to me.
Which is not untrue, right? Your kids are constantly provoking you to anger.
Yeah. Constantly.
Like, in their immaturity, they're going to the bathroom in their pants.
Or not in their pants and they're peeing on you.
Right, exactly. In your stage, right? Or they're throwing things, or they're throwing temper tantrums, or they're disobeying your wife. It's like, if anyone else, like just put that as like a 40-year-old man comes into your house and does all the things that your kids do, and anger doesn't rise up in you, do you have a pulse, right? Like,
If a 40-year-old dude came into my house and started peeing on me,
right.
that would be a
That's
crazy
problematic.
experience.
Exactly. But that really is the call of fatherhood. It's like the backdrop of this is like, you are consistently being provoked to anger, and your knee-jerk reaction is going to be to return immaturity or ignorance or evil with evil, because you are a sinful human being. And so all of us come into this conversation with this natural proclivity to not be good fathers. And in answer to your question, Austin, I like to go to the Message translation sometimes, because it's almost like a sermon. It's like a paraphrase of the text. So it's not a good translation, but it is a good window into what Eugene Peterson thought about the text. He says, fathers, don't frustrate your children with no-win scenarios. Take them by the hand and lead them in the way of the master.
Cool.
So your kids are provoking you to anger, and your response is to do nothing less than show them how Jesus responds to sinners.
That's awesome.
And so that's our job. Funny conversation that came to my mind. So my kids are now old enough that they can give me feedback on how I've done. And it's actually really hilarious. And I see it as part of my role to invite their feedback. And so I remember one time having a conversation with Gabe, my youngest, and I had done, something wrong as a parent. I don't remember what it was. But I said to him, Gabe, I'm not a good dad. And he's like, kind of like, what? And I'm like, well, somebody said to Jesus, good teacher. And he said, why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone. Now, Jesus isn't saying that he's not God, but he's saying, in order to think that I'm good, you also have to think that I'm God. And so I'm not a good dad. And Gabe is like, he's like mini me, which is terrifying. Like, you start to see your own wit and tendencies in your kids or whatever. So he just looks at me, and I see him get this brightness in his eyes. And he goes, Dad, I'm really not expecting you to be perfect, but I think you could do a lot better than you've been. And we had a good...
Thanks for the note, kid. I'm going to go cry now.
A good laugh about that. But what are some of the... you can probably already feel it rising, right? Austin, we just had a conversation at Hazel's about this yesterday. You have these new loves in your life. Like, you love seeing Cora, your wife, be a mom. You love seeing Quincy and holding him. There's all these reflections on God as Father, but you also feel these new, like, selfishnesses rising up in you. So you can even speak to this.
Yeah.
But what are some of those ways that maybe you could anticipate being tempted to provoke Quincy to anger? And what are some ways that, we've got great stories, that make us look not so great.
Oh, yeah.
In ways that we have provoked. And maybe also, like, what have we learned? Like, we're having a conversation with each other. And so, like, what did we need to hear when we were sitting in Austin's shoes, specifically related to do not provoke your kids? Can you think of like a step in it story, Isaac?
Yeah, I can't. The most recent one I think is Lewis said his first curse word not too long ago.
What was it? I'm just kidding.
Let me pull it up.
We can get the explicit sign on our podcast episode.
Oh yeah,
finally.
What a badge of honor that would be.
It's a fantastic story. I will.
Well,
I will say
I
that.
said let me pull it up because he said it to Alexa. He said it to our speaker. He was having a conversation, and my wife Abby happened to overhear the conversation, but I was able to like pull up the transcript on the app
No way.
of the conversation, and
Technology for the win.
yeah, who knew? And so, man, the way I almost stepped in it, and by the grace of God and the wisdom of my wife, I just had that gut or knee jerk reaction that I always have of like, you cussed and that's wrong. Like, I need you to know that it's wrong. And so that was like my reaction was like, have a really stern conversation. Like, look me up. I was like, what did you say? He's like, I don't know what I said. I'm like, yes, you know what you said. And he was 4. Like, he's a 4-year-old. And so he knew the word that he said, but he was trying it on for size. Like, he heard the word for the first time somewhere, and now he doesn't know what it means. He doesn't know the impact that word has. And so I'm putting on him like a, you said it, so you know it. And it's like, dude, he is 4 years old. He has no idea what that word is, what it means, what it can do. And all I was thinking of was like, you said it and it's wrong to say it. And so, man, by God's grace, my wife was there, and I'm crying already. It's fine. My wife is so good.
I always joke with Isaac that with every kid he has, he cries quicker.
Oh, it's true.
So he's
Dude,
got 3.
This is a side story in the middle of another story, but it's worth telling because I was talking to my kids the other day, like before bedtime, and we were talking about like crying, and I was like, Dad cries all the time. And he's like, you don't cry. And I was like, well, I don't cry at home that much for some reason, but whenever I get on stage and talk into a microphone, I cry a lot. And so I come home from work yesterday, and he just goes, Dad, did you cry into a microphone at work today?
That's amazing.
And I was like, no, I didn't. But today I'll go home. He'll ask the same question. And I'll be like, yeah, I absolutely did. Which I knew it was going to happen because it's fatherhood. Anyway, but by God's grace, Abby was there, and she handled it with such like grace and wisdom and beauty, and was able to just like navigate it so beautifully, and was like, oh, let's talk. Like, this is a conversation. Like, this is a safe place to like ask about words that you're unsure of. And so I was so quick to be right. Like, rightness feels like righteousness, and it's not. It's just like being right is so much less important in life than I like always believed it to be. And so my like instinct to be right and to assert that I have the right view on something like fatigued my kids if I don't handle it well, which I fail often. I fail all the time and am reactive so often. And by God's grace, I've seen that change and shift by one degree to the next. But yeah, that is like I think when you think of like, what do you do worst as a father? It's like the one thing that Paul said to do is not provoke your kids to anger. And that's the thing I do the most. And so, yeah.
My story that comes to mind is, I think it was over Christmas break. My boys were downstairs watching, I think it was a Minnesota Wild game, and they wanted to stay up to the end of the game. And so I was like, okay, you can stay up to the end of the game if you clean up the basement. And they had pizza downstairs, and they'd had drinks and, all these different things. And I was tired and a little probably on edge already. So I had that conversation with them, went down later, and they didn't do a good job. And instead of just saying gently, hey guys, you didn't do a good job, I believe my exact words were, I wanted this to be perfect. And both the boys, like Gabe ends up in tears, and Luke ends up having like an angry conversation because I said, I wanted this to be perfect so you can't watch the game. And then I spent the next, period of time backpedaling from that, like, hey, I just taught you guys a master class on what I'm not supposed to do, which is, instead of making very clear what my expectations were at the beginning, like exactly what I wanted done, I just placed this blanket expectation on you when you didn't come through on what was in my mind. Then I held you to a standard that no one can live up to. Like, that's something Gabe said to me in tears. Like,
Oh, wow.
you've never done anything perfect. Dad, why are you telling us that we have to do something perfect? But I think when I get angry, tired, frustrated, I put expectations on my kids or create an emotional atmosphere that Eugene Peterson would say, that's just a no-win situation for them, because they can't clean up the basement perfectly, and neither can I. And so I feel the conviction of so many different times. But I think what's common between our two stories is it's when we expect our kids to have a level of maturity that a 14-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old or whatever can't possibly have. And so we often have to be humbled into remembering what we were like at those different ages and the patience that we need in order to move forward. And so really, like, the text itself clarifies for us what this looks like, because in contrast to provoking your children to anger, you're to bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So the opposite of provoking is discipline and instruction. So we have these two different tools in our tool belt of parents at various ages. And so one of the things that I think was going around in the 90s, like Nate Bargatze always jokes that 90s Christianity was like the most hardcore Christianity, and everyone was like really into James Dobson, and everyone was really into like first-time obedience as parents. So one of the things I remember floating around in the atmosphere that I was growing up in is like, what you need from your kids is first-time obedience. And so what you're looking for in your kids is obedience with the right action and the right heart. So right away with the right action and the right heart. And so the expectation is obedience. Like, I tell you what to do, you obey. And the problem with that is I think it sets us up as dads for failure, because it makes us think my job is to get my kid to obey me. And I think what this text teaches is our job as dads, as our kids are growing through the various stages, and this looks different at different stages, is to instruct them and to discipline them. But we will never get our kids to completely obey us or God. And the greater context of that is like, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, which means if we're right-sizing ourselves in relationship to our Heavenly Father, we don't obey Him, as sometimes we're expecting our kids to obey us. And yet He's patient with us, He's gentle with us, He's kind with us, and He doesn't create an emotional atmosphere in the relationship that is nitpicky and accusatory. And the only way that He can do that is He's not setting aside His standard, like God is holy, but He is giving us time to mature. And so what do you guys think that looks like to use those different tools? Or what will it look like to use those tools, right, of discipline and instruction? Like, when is discipline the appropriate response, and what does that look like? What are the different tools of discipline that God would say these are good? And then what is the time where instruction would be the appropriate response?
So I'm coming into this conversation not knowing how to do this, right? But I really think that this is helpful for me to hear from you. I mean, you've mentioned this to me before, and those two tools of instruction and then discipline has been really helpful for me just in thinking ahead to different circumstances that are going to happen, right? You've used the example of when Quincy is eventually going to be sitting at the table with us, eating a meal, and he throws his food. The first time he does that, he doesn't know that a food item is not to be thrown.
Right. To him, it's a ball. Like everything's a ball.
Everything, yeah.
To a 1.5-year-old.
Absolutely. So he's not going to know that we don't throw food, but we eat food. So, you've helped me see that opportunity or that circumstance is an opportunity to instruct and say, "Oh, Quincy, we eat food. We don't throw food." And eventually, after he's been instructed that that's how we live and that's how we operate at the dinner table, then if he continues to do that, then there would be the opportunity to discipline and say, and to teach him through discipline. This is what happens when you disobey the instruction that has been given. So I just think that has been a really helpful
the biblical
example.
precedent for that, right, is that where there's no law, sin is not counted. Right? And so you can't even really put that in, even a seemingly like egregious behavior like that, like something that's going to provoke you to have an angry feeling inside because of the implications for your night on it, right? It's like a glass jar of baby food and they chuck it and it's like everybody's been there, right? And the jar breaks or it splatters all over your door and then you're just like, okay, a night where I'm already tired and bedtime is close. Now it's been prolonged. Now I'm frustrated, all those types of things. And so you want to put it in like a moral category, like and so you see parents make this mistake specifically with the oldest kid, which can create like a pathology in older kids, right? Because they get the meanest version of dad because it's like, I'm going to grab your hand and smack it. No, we do not throw food. And it's like, well, do they know that they're so you can't discipline what you haven't instructed.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And if there's clear instruction, but then how many times, like with kids, how many times do things need to be repeated?
Right.
So maybe the principle is like, you can't discipline what you haven't thoroughly instructed.
Yeah, there needs to be so much clarity around your instruction. And like one of the things I do often but imperfectly is just like have kids repeat back to me, because it's like I told Lewis this morning, it's like, okay, in 7 minutes you need to get ready in 7 minutes. You got 7 minutes to play and then we're leaving the house. Like you understand me? We say, are we cowabunga on this? Which is a whole other thing, he was like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, okay, repeat back to me what we're cowabunga on. And he's like,
Totally.
It's like, so we're not cowabunga on this, okay?
Well, and then you even double click on that. It's like, does he even know what 7 minutes is?
No, has no idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting thing too, but that's great.
Wow.
And so like in a perfect scenario, like how would that conversation continue? Like if he says, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's repeating the instruction, and then it's like, okay, say it back to me. It's like 7 minutes, I need to get ready for school. It's like, okay, cool. We're both on the same page, just vocabulary-wise. We both know the same words. And then literally 3.5 minutes, half the time goes up. I said, Lewis, you have 3.5 minutes left to play. And he just goes, what? I only have 3 minutes left. It's like, yeah, you need a constant reminder, especially because time is, what is time to a child? Time is nothing. And so it's like you need to not only communicate, but also reinforce and just give like really, I don't know, like parameters, but also just like reminders and just help along the way. It's like, you're not going to know when 7 minutes is up. We set a lot of timers. We've got our Alexa speakers around the house. We set timers constantly. It's like playing music and setting timers are the top features, because just hearing that timer go off or saying like, hey, you got 10 minutes before bedtime. And then you set the timer and then you're like, hey, Alexa, how many minutes do we have left? Like Lewis is old enough to ask that now. And so he can check in on that by himself and that helps fill in his understanding so that he's ready to comply. Because I feel like, I mean, I'm no child psychologist, but when you just like come out of the blue and you're like, this is happening now, it's so hard for a kid to get on board with that like new vision that you've just given them.
It's not just hard for a kid to get on board. It's hard
totally.
for our elders to get on board when I do that. It's hard for our staff to get on board if I do that. It's hard for my wife to get on board if I do that. And sometimes Melissa's even had that conversation, like, let alone our kids. Like when you just come in and it's like, no, this is what we're doing. That's not real leadership that is going to create any kind of stability or set up your kids for success, right? That's not in the category of instruction.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like clarity, repetition, like that reinforcement has to be there.
Yeah.
And then like when discipline comes, I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody how to raise their kids exactly, but this is how we've done discipline, specifically when it comes to spanking, because that's kind of, I mean, so far, 5-year-old is the oldest. That's kind of like the top tier of just like, we haven't done groundings. Like we haven't even done a lot of timeouts. It's more just the kind of the communication, other disciplines like taking snacks away and things like that. Those all things escalate to the spanking. And so spanking only comes when it's like, man, we've been really, really, really clear about this instruction. We've repeated it a lot and we've had you repeat it back to us. And we've laid out like, hey, this is the instruction we've given you. These are the actions you've taken. If you continue down this path, it's going to result in discipline, which will be a spanking in this situation. Like you need to think about the decisions that you're making and make sure that you're choosing them wisely, or that you understand that if you continue to choose defiance, that it's going to result in a discipline. And that's going to be carried out not in anger, but in love, because it's important for you to be able to recognize what is appropriate and inappropriate behavior, what's godly and ungodly behavior within the context of our household.
And I think that's really important, because if you are flying off the handle emotionally while spanking your kids, you are not spanking your kids. You are abusing your kids. And we are not in any way proponents of that type of emotional atmosphere surrounding spanking. And I want to specifically speak to somebody, who, as a dad or a mom, if they're listening to this, and has gone there before. You're not the only one who's gone there before. And there is forgiveness for that, but there needs to be an acknowledgement, like, I am not disciplining my child in a way that is helpful to them. So I think a lot of times around the spanking conversation, there can be this visceral emotional reaction from somebody who grew up in a home like that. And I would say if you're going to choose between that, like flying off the handle while spanking your kids or not spanking your kids, I would say don't spank your kids. Like if you can't stay calm and measured, then it's not discipline and it's not helpful. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think those conversations, and again, like I'm so hesitant to like tell anyone what to do with their lives outside of like, the Bible says this. That seems pretty clear. But the way that we've seen that kind of a spanking, that kind of discipline play out in our home has been, man, pretty wild as far as like the change in attitude that happens. So when we go into like, okay, things have escalated, we've communicated really clearly, you've been really willfully disobedient in this, now it's time for a spanking. I've had a number of times where it's like, I need to cool down first. Like I'm going to leave for a little bit. I just need you to sit here. I'm going to go gather myself and pray and get in the right space, like head space and heart space for this conversation. And then I come into the room and it's a conversation. It's like, okay, buddy, here's the situation. I just rehash everything. I told you this many times. We went through this. I told you that if you continued in this behavior, this was going to happen. You chose to do that. Now we're here. So what's about to happen is, because you were disobedient in this way, I'm going to give you 2 spanks or 3 spanks or whatever it is. I'm really clear about like what's going to happen, like how many spanks it's going to be. And then it happens. And there's no joy.
Mm-hmm.
There's no joy in that. It like breaks my heart to see my kids hurt. And yet, like, man, almost every time, for some, I don't get it, but almost every time when we have that conversation, I'm like, do you understand like what's about to happen and why it's happening? There's something there. There's some understanding. There's never like for whatever reason, so far there hasn't been like no, don't hit me. It's like, yeah, I get it. Like, I get what we're doing here. And then the spanking happens, and then it's just a hug. And like, I love you. Oh man, I'm going to cry so much today. It's going to be great. It's I love you. Like, I want the best. I want the best for you. And man, like, I'm a terrible person and a terrible dad. But if that's my heart for my kid, like, how much softer and more beautiful is God's heart for me when that discipline comes or whatever that is. But the then attitude change that we've seen when they're just like, so entrenched in a behavior or in an attitude, and we're able to like step back and reframe and reset, and that way they walk out of the room a different kid. Like it's been so immediate, and there's never been like any hint of brokenness of relationship from that, like yet, by God's grace. And I've been so grateful for the way that's had its role in our home.
Wow. Yeah. I would say regarding discipline, I think that's like a beautiful example of when it goes well. And I think I've got some of those in my family, but I've also got kids that, like, one of my kids in particular, a couple of my kids actually, like Melissa and I have been masterful at producing strong-willed children, both through adoption and biologically. So probably something deep and sinister about both of us that's created that. But I have a kid who literally I spanked faithfully, and never once did that child break. Never. And so the temptation there is like Melissa and I have many conversations over the years, like, it doesn't seem to be working. Like, this is not having a softening effect on them. And it would actually create relational distance.
Totally.
And it didn't seem to, quote unquote, work. And that's why I think it's really important that when you start talking about instruction and discipline, ultimately you're trusting God with it, not just looking for a result. And so what I want to encourage people with is, like, this is what's best, whether it's working or not. Whether you have an Isaac story, you have a Drew story, because it's God's word. And so God, in his infinite wisdom, has said, these are the tools in our tool belt. And spanking isn't the only type of discipline.
Oh, yeah. No,
there could be a timeout. There could be a stern warning. There could be taking away dessert. There could be, like, there's kind of a punishment fits the crime kind of mentality here. But the thing about it that's so interesting is, like, there are people that are, Jordan Peterson describes different people as agreeable and disagreeable. And that's like a temperamental reality. And whether you have agreeable or disagreeable, stubborn or soft-hearted kids, you could actually think the discipline is working and your kid's just manipulating you. Or you could think it's not working because the kid's not giving you anything, but they actually, underneath it all, they just don't want you to think you're winning because they're seen as like a competition. But it is actually driving into their heart. And so I just want to encourage people in your particular stage of parenting, no matter how your kid is responding, if it's beautiful or it's brutal, to continue to discipline your kids. to just stick with it, because I think I've been at parenting long enough to know, like, for some of our kids, they have more self-righteous tendencies. And then we discover all this sin that was happening that we didn't know about. And for our other kids who were more in-your-face rebellious, we've seen softening and a different set of strengths that's come out.
I'm so grateful for that perspective, Drew, because, like, my oldest is 5. Life is very uncomplicated. As far as, like, their worldview and, like, what just there's a lot of categories they don't have yet. And so I feel like discipline is easier the less complicated your child is. And you're saying punishment fits the crime. And it's like you also have to, like, tailor that to each kid. Like, Adelaide hasn't had a spanking in a long time because I say, hey, if you continue down this path, you don't get it. There's something else first before that. It's been snacks. It's like, no snacks tomorrow. And
That girl loves some snacks.
You threaten that girl snacks, she's going to straighten up right away. For Lewis, it's Legos. It's like, hey, man, no playing with Legos tomorrow. And so you try to tailor that discipline to the kid, but also, like, man, I really don't want to alienate anyone who has tried to be faithful in their discipline and just not gotten the same reaction. Like, nobody's kids are better than anybody else's kids. It's like the temperaments are so different. And I mean, it's yeah, I don't want to alienate anybody in saying, like, oh, like, discipline's been so beautiful. It's like, so far, by God's grace, so far it has. But man, I'm just, buckling up for a long life ahead of me still. And I'm just grateful for your insight and wisdom to be able to speak into it and say, like, oh yeah, it's actually been super hard. And I haven't seen that, like, beautiful attitude change reaction, because we just need to hear that. The comparison of not only your own parenting, but the way your kids are behaving or reacting is so it's just really dangerous and potentially toxic.
Well, and I think all of us have been close enough to college ministry to know that it's not as simple as great parents, great kids. Because there are tons of kids that you can think of within Salt Company right now who had terrible parents, and they're great kids who are walking faithful with Jesus. And then there's other kids who have ideal parents and they're terrible kids who have, for seasons of their life, walked away from Jesus. And so even though we are called to this very specific type of fatherhood, there is not a guarantee that X produces Y. And if you do this the right way and put the right emotional atmosphere around your kids and apologize and are a great dad, that means that you'll have great kids. And there are biblical examples of that as well. There are very good, upstanding fathers who end up with terrible children. I mean, think of David, a man after God's own heart, and his own son tries to kill him. And is that because there was something wrong with him? No, he was a man after God's own heart. And sure, there's faults and failures in him, but it's not a direct tie, like, you do this, you get this. There is a mystery in God's providence and a trust that we have to go into that with. I was reminded when you were talking to Isaac, something I find myself saying to people often in your stage of parenting is I have this really vivid conversation in my mind that I had with Mark Arendt. And it's kind of humbling for me that now I'm in the stage of parenting he was in when he had this conversation with me, and I was in your stage of parenting. And he said, Drew, he's like, you are in the control stage of parenting. Like, you decide where your kids are on a Friday night. You decide when they go to bed. Like, life is pretty contained. And discipline is spanking, and there's an attentiveness that they have to you. They still run to you when you come to the door, all those types of things. And he said, I'm in the influence stage of parenting, where I've been through this close proximity relationship where I'm keeping my kids from outside influences and deciding kind of every hour of their day in a sense. And now, like for me, I'm in the stage of parenting where like sometimes I'll have this like ideal Friday night planned, and it's like our normal Friday night is we order Chipotle for our family and all those types of things. And we used to call it family movie night. Well, we might as well just call it like family scatter time because like, I mean, the kids are like, leave my burrito bowl in the fridge because I'm going to this person's house to spend the night, and they write their names on it and they want it the next day. And they're making plans with their friends. And sometimes they involve us and sometimes they don't involve us. But actually, they've become such creative sinners that Melissa and I are having conversations even just recently, like in terms of screen time and these different things. And they're having these side conversations that we later discover or figure out about, or they have secret girlfriends and boyfriends, or, you know, these are the conversations. And there's a certain level of just like, we can't keep up with it all. We can't control it all. Like if they want to sin and walk away from Jesus and spend some time doing that, like we all know the pastor's kids or the kids with conservative parents or whatever it is, who when the parents buckle down the hatches and say, okay, you know, you broke my trust, so you can't do anything, that emotional atmosphere actually solidifies the rebellion. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out in real time right now. And Melissa and I are trying to get on the same page with. But I think the way that it's connected to the stage that you're in is you're establishing a relationship of consistency and trust. That there is disapproval of behavior, but there is deep love for them that really matters when you get to the stage where you have to have these established relationships of trust in order to manage the influence stage. So that's an encouragement to continue to be consistent and continue to push forward. And I think, honestly, one of the best tools in your tool belt as a parent that I continue to lean on is just to ask for forgiveness. To say, like, I did provoke you to anger. I didn't do a good job explaining that. You know, I haven't created time for you. You know, those types of things that really matter. So.
That's such an easy discipline to fall out of, and one that I feel like one that I, not intentionally, I don't think I've been avoiding it necessarily, but I can't think of the last time that I just like sat down and was like, I did that. I'm so sorry that this happened. That was my sin. Like, will you forgive me? I think I had a decent stretch of that, but I just feel the conviction of like, oh man, I need to re-up on that discipline of apologizing to my kids. I do a lot of like making sure my kids apologize to each other, and like sorry is not an acceptable apology. You have to say what you're sorry for and ask for forgiveness. But I need to re-up on that discipline for myself, because man, like never once have any of my kids been like, no, I don't forgive you. Like they want relationships so bad. And they need to hear your like imperfections. They need to hear that you are still a person who's struggling with sin, and that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have broken the rules and be sorry for it. If they don't see it modeled, that you can like come back from that brokenness of trust, or that breaking of a rule, then they won't know what to do when they've done it. And at least what I've seen in my kids is like the instinct is to hide and to not disclose that, because there's a fear of what happens if I tell, like, what have I done to the relationship? So
that made me think of something that actually I remember talking to Joel Vent. He used to be the youth pastor at Cornerstone, and this was before I had kids, but I was just curious, like, how do you parent a teenager? Like, because what he was doing was kind of an equivalency, and he said it's so interesting because he said, I'll meet with parents and they'll say, my kids don't want anything to do with me. And it's like heartbreaking to them. And they meet with the kids and they say, I'm testing my parents to see if they love me. I want them to pursue me. And you just reminded me of that like our job is to be like God as dads. He's a rescuer. And have you guys read the Jesus Storybook Bible? The never stopping, always, you probably remember it better than I do because you're reading it probably right now with your kids. I haven't read it in a while, but there's this description of God's love that's just like, it never stops. It just keeps going. It keeps pushing. And so some different things that I've tried to employ, because that's really my mindset, is like, there's no substitute for warm relationship with your kids. And here's something sinful but true. You're going to like some kids better than others. You're going to really like hanging out with some of your kids, and you're going to not like hanging out with other kids, but all of them need to be pursued by you. And so something that my dad actually modeled for me, he took us on a business trip to Washington, D.C. when we were kids, all of us. And we got to tour, and it was like a highlight of my life. I was in second or third grade. And so I call it in my family the 5th grade trip. So I went to Washington, D.C. with one of my kids. I went to New York City with one of my kids. I went to Boston with one of my kids. And then Gabe is doing French immersion school. And so I told him if he finishes French immersion school, I'll take him to Paris. And so, but the whole point of the trip is just like, I love you. Like, let's connect. And I don't want them to think that all I care about as a pastor is like the next building campaign. Like, I don't want to just be generous to our church. I want to be generous to them. And the other thing, just on a smaller budget or just something we've done along the way, is just daddy dates. Right? Or man time, depending on guy or girl. Take them. That's good. But take them, and I've got so many pictures on my phone just of like, my kids with just a giant cinnamon roll that's as big as their head. But here's what that actually feels like. Like, it sounds like romantic. It's awesome. Like, a lot of it is just like, so how's school? Good. You got any crushes? Nope. I remember Aaron Hill, he was one of the elders at Veritas, telling me that, like, you've got to push through the awkward relationship with your kid where you have those type of weird interactions and conversations, because you're building toward a deep, vibrant relationship with them,
Yeah, that just reminds me of my own relationship with my dad and having conversations in college and after college.
Part.
Well, yeah, I'm looking back at my time as like a middle schooler, high schooler, and remembering the ways that I was pushing my dad away. But it wasn't because I didn't want him. It was just like that rebellious phase. I wanted approval from people, but I was pursuing it in looking for other people's approval. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be accepted and whatever, and didn't give my dad the same sort of like relational pursuit as I was giving to other people. But then at the end of college and after college, me and my dad being able to have this really sweet friendship. And I'm just so thankful for the way that he consistently pursued me, and did demonstrate that like never stopping relational pursuit. And now me and my dad have this really redemptive, sweet relationship that has changed over the years. And so now me thinking about that with Quincy, and just the day that I'm going to be able to like be his friend. I just want that so bad, but it's going to be, I'm just curious what it's going to be like, the different phases of like awkwardness, pain, but so thankful that I have a sweet vision to look forward to,
Well,
So cool.
Here's something that I was surprised by. I think we've talked about this before, Isaac, like from the dad end of that, it is really painful when your kids pull away from you and when you can't break through that wall, and it actually brings up your own insecurities. And it's so weird because I'm 41 years old, and in relationship with my kids, sometimes I feel like I'm 15. Like inside, I'm like, I want you guys to hang out with me on Friday night. Like I miss like the snuggles and the like I was your hero, and now I'm like a piece of the furniture. Like that's the stage. I'm literally like, I mean, the Uber driver is great because it's like sometimes there's just no words like from the passengers. and it's like I'm just doing the thing, but that identity in Christ thing that is so vital and important, that relational reality with your kids of feeling rejected by them becomes a doorway into the presence of God.
Wow.
Rather than an excuse to kind of go inward emotionally or because our temptation as godly men is to do what worldly men do. And in my stage of life, what worldly men do is they throw themselves into hobbies, or in worst case scenarios, they bolt.
Mm-hmm.
They just leave the family because it's too hard, because they're not the hero, or they don't feel like the center anymore. And I think a lot of it is that emotional immaturity, that they're not getting their needs met by God. And so they're looking for their kids or their spouse to fulfill them.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you go.
Oh, I was going to say, I remember the first time that happened for me. Lewis was, less than a year old, but he went through his first like mommy phase, like hardcore mommy phase. And I became useless in the house. Like he wouldn't let me do anything.
Oh, totally.
And I remember this one time where it's like, he was trying to get me out of the room. He's like crying for mom. I'm like, well, mom's busy, so you're stuck with me. And Abby's like, he's a baby. You don't get to be a baby. He is the baby. He's allowed to behave that way. You're a man. You're not allowed to behave that way.
Totally.
And just like the conviction of like, oh man, I didn't realize how much of my identity was wrapped up in like, if like, does he need me? And like, am I fulfilling his like needs? Am I helping sustain his life? And is he enjoying my presence? And the moment that was shut off, I was so hurt, like so deeply by a baby. I didn't know a baby could hurt my feelings so much, but it was exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, oh gosh, like my identity is not in Christ right now. My identity is in my fatherhood. And I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I felt blindsided.
Well, okay. Quick story on that for me. My kids still prefer like tuck in for mom. Like there's just a nurturing touch. I mean, I would rather be tucked in by Melissa than me too, like full disclosure. But like, I get it. But like Gabe in his early years, I used to come in and he's such a savage. He's so funny. But I would come in and he would just look at me when I came in. He's like, I want mommy. And I'm like, well, you're getting dad tonight. I'm tucking you in. And he would just look at me and go, I hate you.
Oh my God.
And he would just have this like, and I just remember just being like, don't cry. Don't say you hate him back. Don't be mean. Just walk away. Just walk away slowly. I know.
Wow.
But that you gotta endure that. Okay. Isaac, we got like just a few minutes left. But I think this is really important to talk about. Like there's not only the relational aspect with your kids and the rejection and all that, but we've talked about this. Your relationship with your wife changes a lot. And I heard a counselor say this, and this was relatable to me. I know this isn't true in every single family. Moms, they move their love toward their kids once in general. The generalization, which isn't helpful to everybody, doesn't apply to everybody. But in general, moms are just like, it's about the kids. Like, and it's the temptation for a mom is to become kid-centered. And the temptation for a dad is to want to go back to the way it used to be. Relationally with your wife, sexually with your wife, all those types of things. And so there is an intentionality that is required of you in pursuit of your wife, and a real death to self and emotional difficulty that goes into that. Is that relatable to you as well, specifically in your stage?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to do around the house.
Yeah.
And Abby's so good at managing the house. And so there's definitely the aspect of like, okay, our time and energy goes into just like checking the boxes and dotting the T's and crossing the I's, like getting people fed and getting people transported and signing up for this, that it feels hard to like make that time for each other. So yeah, man, while you were talking, I'm struggling to like connect the dots A to B, but it made me think of the relationship changes, but it's also like so beautiful. You were sharing at staff meeting the other day about how like you get to now see Cora like sustain a life. Like she was sustaining Quincy's life with her body when he was in there, and now he's out and she still gets to carry that out. And I just got to see that. I remember like being in the kitchen and having that conversation with Abby of like, man, Christ like bodily bore our burdens, and I've like been so privileged to watch you like bodily bear the burdens of sustaining another life. And so yeah, our relationship was so different in that season and is so different in this season. But one of the things that like your kids need to see is that they need to know that they're not the top priority. Like they are not who we built the family around. We built the family around us. Like here it comes. We're like the core of this family is Abby and I. Mm-hmm. And that's like the most important thing. And who do I love most in the house? It's Abby. Mm-hmm. And like you exist because of my love for her and our love for each other. And so for them to know that they're not carrying that, like even for them to know like, oh, if I do something wrong and like there's tension in my relationship with my parents, that's not going to make the house fall apart. Like mom and dad love each other, and that's the love that's carrying the house, and that love is being carried by our love for Christ and for Christ's love for us. And so, man, that's a little bit maybe not speaking to exactly what the question was, but the dynamic changes absolutely, and yet it manifests in such beautiful ways that we didn't get to see before. And so managing that can be really challenging. But when those moments come, like learning to see them and appreciate them for the season is really helpful and important.
Mm-hmm. And I think just to follow up on that a little bit. So I think you're speaking to the beauty part of it, and I think I'm speaking a little bit more to the temptation part of it. But I think this specific counselor also followed that up. He said usually the temptation for women is the list. It's anxiety. And so they feel like I'm shoveling snow while it's snowing. And so there's so much to do. Like I don't have time to stop and be relational with you anymore. And for men, the characteristic temptation is self-pity. And so it's not the way it used to be. My kids don't love me. My wife isn't there for me in the same way. And so I think the beauty comes on the other side of the duty. And so I think what I'm encouraging dads to do is fight the self-pity, because the self-pity leads to bitterness, and bitterness leads to porn addiction, adultery, anger. Like you just don't want to go down that path.
Just like the absence of your just checking out, and it's like being on the phone instead of engaging with your wife or your kids. Like you can check out as a dad while you're still in the room. Yes.
And so that's something I need to hear about every day. It's just like, I need to be engaged, and that's challenging. And so I think that's a good place for us to leave off the conversation. And it's like, I'm probably going to say this at the end of about every conversation. These are all ... conversations.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about this as men. Let's bear one another's burdens. We're going to plan our men's times for the month of April in the life of our church. And that's the purpose of being in community together. Because I think, my hope is that as you hear us have these realistic conversations as dads who are trying to pursue godliness, that you would both feel like, I'm not alone. Like my struggle is relatable, but it's also not going to defeat me in the context of community with Christ beside me and the church with me and the Spirit of God moving me on and the gift of the scriptures. I mean, we basically spent this whole time talking about one verse.
Right.
We got a whole Bible.
Right.
That is going to spur us on. So yeah, that's my encouragement, guys. Let's continue the conversation and look forward to that.
Sweet.
Absolutely.